Hi everyone, this is Jewish Talk, coming to you from Nassau Community College on 90.3 WHPC, also streaming on the iHeart and the iTunes app. This program is later archived on Spreaker.com. So hi there, my name is Rabbi Perl. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This all depends on when you are listening and joining us. Dear friends, the world stands in shock at the horrific massacre of innocent children and their teachers at the elementary school this week in Uvalde in Texas. Where does such evil come from that would allow a human being to show such contempt for human life and of his own free will cause such utter destruction, pain, and suffering? Seeing the frequency and the ferocity of such events, sadly, it is almost impossible not to wonder, where is the human race heading? The very fabric of human society seems to be coming apart at the seams. Life, the most sacred of all things, itself is no longer valued. Is there any hope? Not only such extreme violence gives rise to such questions. We live in an age of what seems like increasing extremism on different fronts. Social media is full of hatred and vitriol. What used to be ordinary conversation is now highly charged. Today, it seems that in every issue, one is either on the right team or on the wrong team. And if someone is on the wrong team, it is no longer a disagreement. Now, it's if you believe that, you're a traitor to society. It seems almost like one must put on a bulletproof vest before they begin to talk. Because if you say one unpopular thing, it could get violent, God forbid. When we seem so very apart, is there in fact anything left to hold on to keep us together? What is the key to engaging with someone on the other end of the ideological spectrum without labeling him or her as an enemy of the people? What can people who can hardly talk to each other peacefully do to find a common ground? Today, I'd like to take a lesson about finding common ground with others from the events that are upcoming. This coming Tuesday and Wednesday. Tuesday is Rosh Chodesh Sivan, beginning of a Jewish month that ushers in the holiday of the coming Sunday and Monday, the Holiday of Shabbos. So the very momentous month, Shavuos, is the holiday where we all receive the Torah at Mount Sinai. And also a lesson I'd like to share with you from one of the Dayenus, one of those popular songs in the Pesach Haggadah, Dai Dayenu, Dai Dayenu. So I want to suggest that what's happening in the next couple of days, what happened historically on Tuesday, way back, has an impact on how we could look at the world today. Let me just give you a little bit of a background in terms of the Dayenu. Dayenu is a popular song, and Dayenu means enough, where we list 15 great deeds that the Almighty performed, from taking us out of Egypt to bringing us to the Holy Land, and we thank God for each one of these stages. If He had done only one of these deeds for us without the rest, we would have said Dayenu. That's how the refrain goes. It's a meaningful, worthy of thanks. Everything is worthy of thanks. At the end of the day, of course, not only do we thank God for every individual thing that He did, but also in His infinite kindness, He gave us all those 15 good deeds and blessings. Now, one of them I'd like to focus on. One of them says, if the Almighty had brought us to Mount Sinai and not given us the Torah, Dayenu, it would have been enough. Now, what famous question, how could it be enough? What good would have been to be brought to Mount Sinai if it wasn't to receive the Torah there? What value is there in being at Mount Sinai if we didn't get what we came for, which was to receive the Torah at Mount Sinai? What good does it do to get into a car if the car doesn't move? What good is there to come to a restaurant if they're not going to serve you? So what does this stanza mean? If God had brought us to Mount Sinai and not given us the Torah, we would have been thankful. So the commentaries discuss this. Rabbi David Avudaram, a very well-known commentator on the Haggadah, explains that what we're thanking God for is the awesome experience of just being at Mount Sinai, seeing the open heavens, the lightning, the smoking mountain, hearing the thunder, and the Ten Commandments. That means even if we just heard the Ten Commandments and never received any more of this, that would have been enough. That's how he explains it. Problem is, the stanza doesn't say that if he'd shown us his glory atop of the mountain or made us hear the Ten Commandments, it would have been enough. It says, if he just brought us to Mount Sinai, implying that just the fact of being there, even if we didn't experience any revelation, would have been enough. So why is it better to spend time at Mount Sinai doing nothing any more than any other place in the desert? So I want to share with you a very striking, provoking insight by the Rebbe. And he explains like this, that these Dayenu songs, this song, also provides us with important tools of how to live as a healthy human being. And the Rebbe explains that even before the thunder at Mount Sinai began to roll, and there was this great divine revelation, there was something very important that did happen at Mount Sinai the moment they arrived at the mountain. We're talking about 3,334 years ago, where the Torah tells us they all came and they encamped facing the mountain. And the term used, Vayichan, that's the Hebrew word, is a singular term. Now understand, there were several million people there. You should have said Vayachanu, and they, the Jewish people, all surrounded the mountain. Why did it say, and he camped? If we're talking about the entire nation at that point, why are we just being described as being he camped? And Rashi explains to us that at that night, they were one. Ish echad b'lev echad, like one man with one heart. While all the other places, there were plenty of complaints to go around. You see, this, my dear friends, is something amazing that happened at Mount Sinai. And for that, it would have been worth arriving there, even if we didn't get the rest of the Torah, didn't get anything. Why? What was so unique about arriving there? It was one time in history, there was not a single argument going on at that time. Typically, we say 2 Jews, 3 opinions. Here we have millions and millions of opinions. Yet, everyone at that moment, when they arrived at the mountain, at Sinai, they were at peace. Nobody is annoyed at anyone else. Nobody is jealous. Nobody is angry that someone else has another opinion. No strife, just absolute unity and peace. So how did that happen? Arriving at the foot of Mount Sinai, they were overtaken not by a revelation from above. It wasn't about the thunder and lightning and God speaking. There was something internally changing. It was the moment that inside of us, maybe for the very first time, that everybody became in touch with their inner core of the soul. And when we all are in sync with that inner core of our soul, that pintala, that we all share because we all created in the image of God, it finally hits us with absolute clarity that just because you disagree with me doesn't take away from value, the value of myself. I'm not less because you exist, and I can survive the fact that you disagree with me. That we disagree, sometimes sharply, is only a symptom of the fact that we have different approaches. It doesn't mean we have to hate each other. The sages put it this way: Just like two faces are alike, they're not alike at all, so too, two opinions are also unalike. It's not just a nice saying. Rather, there's a profound message here. I do not get angry at someone else for looking different than me, because I don't view it as an encroachment upon my turf. I don't feel it diminishes me in any way, and therefore I don't feel the need to defend the way I look just because you look differently. In the same way, the sages tell us, there's no reason to get angry at someone else just because he has a different opinion. There are different views on our faces, and there are different views on life. That's okay. And that is necessary for us as a people to fulfill our divine mission on this world. So Mount Sinai that we celebrate this week, the arrival, at Mount Sinai we got it. Everybody understood instinctively that we can't disagree and still have the same goal. It would have been worth being there just for that. Doesn't mean that people don't have their own opinions. As is always the case, there are different opinions, but there is no animosity. The lesson is relevant today more than ever. People have passionate opinions on almost every political issue. People disagree on how to solve communal problems. We have different ideas and different priorities, and it will always be this way. Sometimes we will encounter views that we not only disagree with, but we believe are outright offensive or even dangerous. We may have very good reason for feeling that way, but it still doesn't mean we have no choice but to go to war over it. Even when we disagree sharply, we still have a common ground that we are all created with that single soul, created in the image of God. Deep down, we all want the best for each other. Our goal is the same. Even if I don't like your approach, I can respect you as a person. Even if it is true that there are sometimes bad actors who not only adopt positions that we find dangerous, but do so for wrong reasons, for fame, for money, for political power, we still do not need to rush to absolute condemn. It may be tempting to write off such a person as an enemy of society, an enemy of religion, but that's lazy. We must look deeper and remember that a person's failings are only a part of them. Deep down there is a soul. There is something to communicate with. There's always common ground, and there's always value in trying to cultivate it. So as we prepare to celebrate the events in this coming week that brings us to the Holiday of Shabbos, please remember the events of this Tuesday in the Jewish calendar is called Rosh Chodesh Sivan, the beginning of the month of Sivan, as expressed in the Dayenu, teaching us the value of disagreeing without being disagreeable. Disagreeing without being disagreeable is not always easy. Let me tell you, it requires a good deal of internal work, a work of silencing my own ego, and to a certain extent silencing even the good voices inside of me who don't like seeing people engaging in behavior that contradicts my values. So, when we stood at Mount Sinai, we said Dayenu, because at that moment, everybody stood as one man with one heart. It didn't come automatically. The Talmud describes the days leading to the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. On Rosh Chodesh, this Tuesday, we remember how we arrived at Mount Sinai. On that day, there were no formal welcome, no instructions, no scheduled events. The Talmud explains Moses simply let them rest because they were tired of their journey. It wasn't until the next day. The second day was the relationship and the conversations and the preparations became in earnest. So why was there this silence on the arrival itself? No program, no communications. Because arriving at this momentous occasion, that ever happened on this, this of the earth, so to speak. There was no statements to make, no instructions to give. They'd been counting up for the moment, leaving Egypt so many weeks earlier. They were looking forward to this event. So why wasn't there an immediate instructions to preparation? Why is the sudden silence? Wouldn't we been excited to hear God's message? So what happened? And how exhausted could they have been from the journey? You understand, was it simply they were exhausted? They were surrounded by clouds of glory. They were protected from the elements and from the hardships of travel. So what made them weak and weary? As the Talmud says, they were weak and weary, and therefore there was no instruction given. And the Rebbe explains that it wasn't from the physical journey. It was a spiritual, internal journey. What was being prepared? What was the proper preparation at that moment of being at peace with themselves and with each other? It takes an effort. There was a profound transformation from a collection of disparate individuals coming at that moment to a single unit, preparing to accept this joint divine mission for all generations. It takes an effort. Such a radical shift from I to we is no simple feat. It involves undoing everything you've known since childhood and assuming a new identity altogether. Therefore, the Rebbe explains that historically, when the Jewish people arrived at Mount Sinai, there was no time for proclamations, but a quiet time. What was that? To be able to feel the heart of another person requires a person to keep his own mouth shut for some time. To listen to what others have to say to another person. To feel the beauty of unity, which is so much greater than an individual. Powerful words, my friends. I want to tell you a story of this feeling of unity, and I believe this is key to our understanding of the current events today, whether it's on political or the events in Buffalo, the events in Uvalde in Texas. For some reason, our society has forgotten that every one of us are created in the image of God. When we leave out God in our conversations, a recognition of a higher aspect to all human beings that transcend our differences, we have these problems. There lacks unity in focus, in mission. I'm going to tell you a story. This is a story of Nachman Stitza. He's a young man in his mid-20s. He was a teacher of the Talmud at a school in Modi'in Ilit, a town in Israel. To earn some extra income, he would drive some of the students to and from school each day. One summer day in the August of 2012, when he finished teaching and returned to his van, he saw the most distressing scene of his life. That morning, he had forgotten one of the students, a 3-year-old child by the name of Chaim Boimel, in the car. For hours he had remained in the heat, and now he lay lifeless, sadly. The first responders came, but nothing could be done. It was too late. He was destroyed. One need only see the pictures of him on the news to see a person crushed to the very depths of his soul. He was confined to house arrest, while the Boimel family began to sit shiva for their son. And then something surprising happened. The child's grandfather, Rabbi Perl, could find no rest. Ever the optimist, he's a kind of a person who runs a soup kitchen, providing hundreds of meals daily to the needy. At this very moment of deep pain in his family, he was thinking of the driver. The home was full of pictures of his grandson Chaim, Olav Hashalom, but his mind was fixated on the picture of a broken young man with a wife and 3 children whose life was now destroyed. Rabbi Perl sent a message to this Reb Nachman that the family wanted him to come to the Shiva house. Nachman asked to be left alone. He couldn't bear the thoughts of looking the child's parents in the eyes. But the grandfather didn't give up. Ultimately, Nachman did come for a short visit, but that's not all. At the Nachman's trial, where the prosecution asked for 3 years in prison for leaving the child in the car, the grandfather was in the courtroom and asked to take the witness stand. In a broken voice, he described his love for his grandson. His name was Boimel, which means olive oil. When he came home, the house was filled with light. Rabbi Perl showed the court a picture of his kitchen refrigerator, which was full of pictures of his grandson. But then he took out a big volume of the Jerusalem Talmud and quoted a passage from Tractate Shavuos, which states, when a person is cutting a slab of meat and the hand holding the knife accidentally cuts the butcher's other hand, God forbid, the injured hand doesn't try to take a revenge on the hand that injured it. It understands that the hand with the knife wasn't trying to hurt it. Then turning to the court, Rabbi Perl, the grandfather, said, the driver has a wife and 3 children who need their father to support them. Who will benefit from him sitting in jail for 3 years? The court was shocked by this, but got the message. Instead of prison time, the sentence was lightened to a term of community service. Leichter and Stitza, that means the father, the driver, and the grandfather, eventually started a campaign together for creating awareness about child safety in cars. A few months later, Nachman Stitza, the father who had left the baby in the car, was blessed with a baby boy, and they named that child Chaim, after Chaim Boimel, the boy lost in that car. And who do you think was the sandik who held the baby during the bris? None other than the grandfather. I share this story with you, my friends, because we are living in a world that is increasingly polarized. We often look around at some of the opinions being espoused in the world and want to say, are you serious? Have you gone crazy? Our intuition often is to write people off as crazy, as people to avoid, as people not to reckon with. The Torah tells us that even before the Torah was given, something even more important had to happen first. There had to be a moment, a way, to find a way to disagree with each other without animosity. Perhaps in these confusing times, the very thing demanded of us is to go back to our comfort, out of our comfort zone and get back to basics. And I'm, sharing this with you, with everybody, whatever affiliation, whatever background you come from. Recognize we are who we are, and we all share the same soul created in the image of God. We have our differences, but despite our differences, even because of them, we share an unbelievable wealth of common ground, and that is something to celebrate. May we all, from today through forever, always stand as one person with one heart and in this eternal harmony. So, yes, my friends, we can, this reason, that reason, guns, no guns, all kinds of stuff going on here. And all this conversation is important. But if the litmus test or the ultimate goal doesn't bring us together in a common ground based on the ideas and the values that I have shared with you today, it will go nowhere. We must go back to basis, to recognizing. The Lubavitcher Rebbe often emphasized the importance of introducing into public school a moment of silence. And the purpose of this would be for parents to provide the children in that moment of silence in school, when you're surrounded by academics and teaching, a moment that transcends that moment. And the parents, not the teachers, not the principals, nobody's going to impact anyone with words of religion, but each child would stand for a moment of silence, and up to the parents now, because parents are, I know this sounds off the wall, but parents still have a responsibility to educate our children. It's not just the teachers. And the parents could teach the child that when you're in that moment of silence in school, think about helping somebody else. Think about God. Think about a higher power. Think of a supreme being. Think about the fact that there's an eye that sees, an ear that hears, that we are responsible to be a person of moral standing, of respect to others. What a difference it would make. So much effort has been made, sadly, to run away from these ideas that I believe is now, we are seeing the results of that. When 18-year-olds, whether it's in Buffalo or in Uvalde, can take lives like this. So anyone with a gun, or anybody with harming anybody else, taking from other people's property, or breaking the boundaries of morality between human beings. So my friends, wishing you a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Let's remember all those who sacrificed their lives for our well-being and the security and the safety and the protection of where we live and opportunities we have in our lives. And may we very, very speedily merit the time when there will be no more wars, no more jealousy, no more famine of food or famine of mind, with the coming of the redemption. Wishing everybody a wonderful week. Thank you again.